Hello there. I hope you're well. I'm Hiramoni and welcome to Get Set Global. In today's discussion, we will talk about divorce from varying perspectives, a topic that was considered to be taboo in our society. But have we moved on? Are we seeing a changing attitude to divorce? Is divorce more acceptable now, or just that it's more prevalent? Are women and men breaking the stigma around separation? Are they challenging the status quo like never before? Or does the majority of the population still sees the idea as taboo? The thought of divorce, does it always have to be extremely negative? Is there such a thing as happily divorced? We will get to explore all of it today as my guest will share their personal experience and the experience of dealing with clients as a divorce coach. And I'm really grateful to my guests who are willing to have an open conversation about their experience of divorce and where we are with it as a society at large. All my guests are from the UK, and my first guest is Sarah Davison. Hi, Sarah.
Hi,
Lovely to have
Hira.
you. Hi. Thank you so much for joining.
Oh, thank you for asking me. I'm very excited to be here.
Absolutely. It's a great pleasure. Let me also bring the other two guests. My next guest is Gautam Borthakur. Hi, Gautam.
Hi,
Lovely
hi.
to have you here. Thank you
Well,
so
thank
much.
you for having me.
Thank you
Yeah,
so
thank you
much.
for having me on your show. Yeah.
Perfect. And my third guest is Sarah Chaudhary. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, thank you for
Hi.
having me.
No, not at all. It's a great pleasure to have all of you here. Thank you for your time. And before we start the discussion, I just thought I'll do a very quick brief for all my guests. So let me start with Sarah. Sarah is a world leading divorce coach. She's a best selling author as well, a life and business coach. She's an NLP master practitioner and a motivational speaker. Um, Coming to Gautam Bodhakur, he was born to an Assamese family, is raised in the UK. He runs a successful business here in the UK, and he hasn't told me, but I suppose he is also part of a musical band. He will tell me more about it. And Sarah Chaudhary, she is a TV chef and she is an Indian food expert. Her recipes and her articles have been published in many prestigious publications. She presented BBC's Inside Out, highlighting female chefs in the UK, and she has been also awarded by HRH the Princess Royal for her contribution to the catering industry. So thank you so much to all of you. Let me start with Sarah. So, Sarah, you had a 20-year-long marriage, and that ended this year, I think, in January, after going through a divorce, and you have 4 children from the marriage. Recently, you have come out and spoken about it publicly through social media platforms, and also you have written articles. So, if it's okay with you, would like to know what's your story briefly, if that's fine with you.
So, yeah, thank you, Hiramoni. And well, I suppose I got married at 23 years old. And I did notice from the very beginning, one of the things I think when you're quite young, it's very easy that when you feel that you want something, you can overlook a lot of the negative side of things in a relationship because you might be wanting to pursue marriage, or you might see yourself as a sort of kind of like a goal to get married and have children, that kind of thing. I guess I got married, and there were some things that should have been a red flag, which I probably did ignore, which I did ignore. And things like when I got married, I was expected to live with my in-laws, which is very normal, I suppose, in our culture. But I think the difference with my situation was my ex-husband wasn't actually living with us at the time. So it was just me living with his family while he was living somewhere else. And I think that really impacted on the marriage and on the situation. Anyway, I was only there for about 2 years, and then later on moved back to my hometown in Bournemouth. And then I think by that time, I would say there was a lot of damage done to the marriage by that point, and I hadn't even lived with my husband yet. So 2 years later is when I started living with my husband, and then and I just thought, you know what, give it some time, and we're together now, and everything will be fine. And along the way, I had children because that was my choice. I wanted to have. I always wanted 2 girls and 2 boys, and that's what I was gifted with. And I'm very grateful for that. But along the way, there was obviously lots of ups and downs and lots of issues along the way. And it came to a point, I think, where I just started to think I'm just not really feeling very happy, or I felt like there was a lot of issues, a lot of negativity and bad vibes, which isn't really good for the children. And as much as you try and say, well, you know what, maybe I should just leave, the same sort of time you think, is that going to be good for the children? You start to think about everything else, and you also consider a lot of what people think about you, because that is the culture that you're brought up in. Like, what are people thinking about you, and how does it look? And you worry more about what people are saying than actually what you're feeling and what you're thinking and what you can cope with. So I think it got to a certain point, and then for me personally, in my life, remember waking up one year on my wedding anniversary and just thinking, oh my God, and imagine waking up on your anniversary and just feeling like you don't really wish to continue for another year. Do you know what I mean? You just don't want to carry on. And so it wasn't it wasn't a nice space to be. And I don't think it was just a one-way thing. I don't think he really wanted it either, because if it was something that we both really wanted to work at, I think it would have been okay. I think there would have been an opportunity to improve it. Sure. But no, it wasn't. It wasn't something that I think we could work on. There was lots of issues that I had, financial control, lots of other bits and pieces that were happening in the marriage that I wasn't happy with as well. But, by the end of it, I would say I made a decision and chose to leave, and it's worked out for the best.
Sure. No, thank you for sharing that. So obviously you got divorced this year in January. So I kind of feel you almost have said that it's not like you just woken up one morning and said somehow things are not working in this marriage, but that thought must have, you felt it before as well. It's just, you said, because of children, because of what people will say, you just kept working on, your relationship. That's the idea I get. Yeah.
And I think that's really what a lot of people do.
Sure. Yeah. No, we'll talk about that in a minute. But I want to go to Gautam now, because Gautam, you had a divorce a couple of years back. And from the marriage, you have a son. So if it's fine by you, would like to hear your story. And
actually, it was
also,
a lot. Yeah, sorry.
No,
well,
I was also going
to go on to ask you a question here, huh?
And I also wanted to know, are you in a co-parenting situation? And if yes, then how has that transition been, shifting from parenting to co-parenting?
Okay. Well, I got married in 2002. And it was a semi-arranged marriage. And when we had been introduced, we both thought we were a good fit. She was from Guwahati. Right. But when I met her, she was working in Italy, in Turin. We got married very quickly. As she came to live with me in Bristol. Right. And we had our ups and downs, but we were married for a long time, until I think about 10 years. I had a son in 2007. And it was about 2012 that we split up and got divorced. And I think the actual divorce was a very difficult time, because, as I think Sarah mentioned, and as anyone who's been divorced knows, that emotionally you messed up. You're losing your person that you thought once would be your life partner. I was nearly bankrupt as well. I was trying to run a business by myself, and it nearly bankrupted me, divorce, because we went to court for custody of the child. And I actually went for full custody, but we got joint custody. So it worked out 1 week on and 1 week off. And we were living in West London at the time. And I thought after the divorce, I wanted to take my son back to Bristol, where I've got family, friends, business connections, all this. But the judge said we could have joint custody. And he said I had to remain in West London, where my ex-wife lives. So that was it. And actually at the time, I was quite glad I was in West London, because I didn't know many people there. I'd only been there a few years, and it's a big city, and it's quite easy to not be noticed by not have many friends in that area. And I was quite happy at that, because I didn't want anyone to know my business. I wanted to lock myself away. But I think what gave me strength to come out of that and not put my head in the sand was I had a son to look after. I couldn't just disappear. I couldn't go bankrupt. I had to build my business up again. And I think one of the things during divorce, there's a period where you're actually living with your wife at the same time, and you know you're going to get divorced. And there's that period where, and it's not pleasant. And actually, at some stage, I probably did drink too much, but in the end, I thought, this is just stupid. I'm not. So in the evening, after I put my son to bed at night, I went running. I started going running. And towards the end of that divorce period, I ran a marathon. And mentally, to me, thinking that if I can do that, then actually I can do many things. It was a big positive when there's just everything about divorce is negative.
Right.
I mean, you've got two families at each end. You've got a group of friends that you can perhaps be splitting up as well. And it's just not a pleasant thing. And it's quite a dark place as well. Now, I was fortunate that I had a sister-in-law that was actually Sarah's next door neighbour when you were young. That was my confidant. I had someone to speak to about this, and it was a great help to have someone like that. And I think if it wasn't for my son, who was, when we split up, he was 2 or 3 years old. So he was very young, and he's not known anything. He can't remember beyond that when we were together. So he's had this joint custody going. He's now 14.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's great. So
if it wasn't for him, I don't know where I'd be. He gave me the strength to come out of this, actually.
Right, great. So you're co-parenting now, right? So you, like you said, okay, great. Okay. Sarah, my question has two parts. The first part is to understand what is the role of a divorce coach. So what sort of services that you offer to your clients, if you can explain a little bit. And the second part of the question is the clients who come to you, who are from Asian background. Do you see anything different in those cases?
Yes, two good questions. Thanks, Hira. Well, yes, a divorce coach, I suppose, is relatively new in the UK. Probably, I was really one of the founding divorce coaches in the UK. And since then, it has spread and there is more awareness. So it is growing, but our job is really to help people with the emotional roller coaster you go through, as well as the practical challenges that you face as well. So, anything from taking back your control after a breakup, helping you to dial down those negative emotions that can be all consuming. And by the way, totally normal and natural to go through that. I don't know if you're aware that divorce is known as the second most traumatic life experience we go through after death of a loved one. So it definitely isn't something that can be taken lightly, even if it is an amicable split, as Gwyneth Paltrow sort of brought to our attention conscious uncoupling about 4 or 5 years ago. I mean, that's great if you can do it. And obviously, I think everyone aspires to be able to sort of go their separate ways and remain amicable with their ex. Unfortunately, there are times where even if you want to be amicable, your ex may be what I call a difficult person, which means that, they are hell-bent on making it difficult. Then you might be doing something which I've termed aggressively severing, instead of consciously uncoupling. So there's two sides of that spectrum, and we're probably seeing it right now in the UK on the news with Michael Gove and his wife Sarah Vine, who just announced they're sort of separated because they've drifted apart. Then obviously you've got the Matt Hancock and his wife Martha, who obviously that was a very different set of circumstances. So, you know, everybody is different and copes differently, and a divorce coach's job is to really tailor our approach to each individual and work with men and women all over the world just to help you cope better and start to feel happy again. So as in answer to your question about Asian clients, I mean, everybody is different, and you know, so you couldn't even sort of just say, well, Asian clients tend to be this and Jewish clients tend to be like this. Everybody is so different, and it's you know, everyone is individual. But what I would say is that I have seen more of a stigma that remains in the Asian community than other communities. I think it tends to be harder because there's the family expectations. And actually, I've had a client quite recently who hadn't even told her best friend that her husband had moved out, and he had left her 8 months before. Wow. And she hadn't told anybody because she was finding it so difficult and embarrassing. And the expectations of other people on her were so difficult for her that she just thought, actually, I'm just going to stick my head in the sand and not say anything because I don't want anyone knowing my business. A bit like Ghostin said, I just don't want anyone to know what's going on. And a lot of people feel like that anyway. But I think with the Asian community, what I've seen with my clients is they tend to worry a lot more about what other people are going to think and how it's going to affect not just their standing, but actually maybe their parents' standing in the community and other relatives and friends. So, yeah, I do think that is a bigger concern.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely probably right there, because there are cultural expectations, you know, like you have said, people are fearful about the backlash from families and community, you know, what they will think, especially after an extravaganza wedding, right? And things have not worked out. It's like almost seen as a shameful thing, I suppose. And that's why this discussion, does it have to be like that? I don't know where Sarah is, but I'll then come to Gautam, you. Okay. I think, yeah, she's back. She's back, but I'll start with Gautam anyways. So Gautam, you have just spoken about how hard it was, difficult to go through the process. And like you said, you had someone to talk to. So this support, having some kind of support seems to be quite essential while people are going through this. Now, what I wanted to know is, are there enough support groups for men that you know of? And the second part is, do you think that men find it harder to open up, to talk about their emotional side from your experience? What do you think?
I mean, there's no support group for men, not that I found. And actually, that whole emotional period of getting divorced, it took me about 2 years, I think, in that period to actually get over it, if you like. Yeah. Mm. And in fact, when I first split up, and I had my boy, as I said, he was very young. And I remember going to a women's coffee group, because there's no men's coffee group. Men go to pubs and watch football and swear. But I went to and actually it wasn't for me. You know, I didn't. So actually, I went into solitude. I just concentrated on looking after my son. My father, my father was getting quite ill at that period as well. So at least I would go and visit my grandfather, my boy's grandfather. And I have got 2 brothers and their families, so we're reasonably close as well. We're quite close. So I did have them around me. And actually for the period, I didn't really realize I needed anyone. I didn't realize I needed a support group. I just thought, the divorce I had, I thought, and I still do really, that my circumstances were my own. No one's going through the same sort of thing that I am. Right. It's a different story, and I thought that I've got to get through it, and I think it would be good if there were men's groups. But I think if I can talk for 50% of the population of the earth, us men we're not good at talking about emotional side of things, and so I didn't really. But as I said, I tried to focus on, I thought I've built my business once, I can do it again, And that thing about the man that I can do, there was a big positive coming out of me. So I thought, I can do positive things. And hopefully, touch wood, it's again, I mean, the emotional scars are still there. I can tell you that me and my ex-wife, we don't get along. And it is difficult. And we both have our moments. And I've got a 14-year-old in the middle of that who I feel a bit sorry for about that. But it's just the cards that, that I've been dealt with in life, and you've got to carry on.
So you have actually said that you don't know of many men's support group, and also you have said men find it hard to talk about their emotional side. Now, I was doing a bit of research for today, and it does say, Sarah will agree to this, that men, divorce is harder on men, although they're not very good in saying it. And that's the reason why I think support group is required. There is a experiment which was done by a charity that is actually a support group for men in the UK called onlydads.org, and they have found out that they did this experiment with this room full of men, and there was not a single man, divorced man, who said that they have not had mental health issues after divorce. So clearly there is so much need for, having that kind of support. And good that you have said that men are not good in saying how they feel. Sarah, would you agree to that?
Yes. Now, Only Dads is a very good support system, actually. And I interviewed them. I have a podcast called Heartbreak to Happiness. And I've just done an interview with Only Dads about this, because it's not very well known, and there are lots of ways that women can get support, but it is harder for dads. And then if you put on top of that they find it harder to communicate about these things, sometimes it can be harder to reach. I mean, obviously I'm in this industry day in, day out, and there are support groups out there, but they are not as well known. You're right, and it's not as obvious. And for someone that's not as likely to ask for help, they probably need to be a lot more obvious, which is why I did a podcast with them, which goes to, I can send you the link for, because I think those things are very, very helpful. But yeah, it definitely, men find it harder. I don't know if I agree that that divorce is harder for men. I just think we all have our go-to strategies for coping. And us women, we usually are quite good at talking about our emotions, and we'll go and we'll sit with friends and we will talk about it. There's a downside to that, though, is that we keep ourselves stuck because we keep telling the story over and over again, and our brain thinks, oh, this story I know the pain with this story, it hurts, and then I get upset. And then because maybe you've told so many people, you've got to tell the story so many times, which again reopens those wounds, and it can keep you stuck. So our coping strategies aren't necessarily healthier or more helpful, although stuffing your emotions down, as Joyce was saying, not talking about things and maybe leaning on drink or other things, can be very destructive as well, because you're still going to carry that forward. But I think, like Gosam said, it's important to know that, yes, you will have scars, emotional scars from these breakups, because it is trauma. But the good news is they don't have to define you. And I think that's really important, to hang on to the fact that you will get through this. You may not know the how right now, but you will get through it. And like Gosam said, if you can set yourself some goals, like, for example, running a marathon, which is quite extreme. So
fantastic. Yeah.
Again, you're showing yourself, well, if you can get through this, you can get through anything. And remember your first heartbreak. That's usually a really tough time. And I have a lot of clients that are 19, 20, 21 going through their first heartbreak, and they think it's the end of the world. But actually, you know what? You get over that, right? And then you move on. So it's about knowing that you've done it before. You will get through it. This might be different. There might be kids involved, which can be a very more sort of painful experience when you've got a child involved as well. But ultimately, you will get through this. So it's having that faith.
Yeah, great. That's a really good point. I think you have picked up. And when you said we're not sure whether it's harder on men, I think it only said because I think 65% women initiate the divorce process in comparison to 35%. Is it?
Yes.
That's what? Yeah.
Yes, but let me say, sometimes I think about it this way, because I have a lot of clients in this situation. Their husband has had an affair, okay, and he feels guilty, so he allows her to make that first move. It's
Okay.
not always what it seems. Okay, so
Right.
sometimes
Okay.
it's not just the person, or maybe it's an agreement. Well, you do it first because I don't want to cause trouble, or I don't want to make things. If I let her do it, then it looks, it gives her a little control back. Maybe if she hasn't got
Right.
the control. So it's not
Okay.
always what it seems. So those
Right.
stats can be misleading.
So it's
And I'd
always
just like to
agreeing.
say, on that note, I remember saying to my ex-wife, "I want a divorce. Yeah, I'm going to." And I went immediately down to the courts to put my paper in, and it was about an hour later, and they said, "Oh, your wife just came in 30 minutes ago and beat you to it and put the papers in before you." Yeah. So I said, fine.
All
So
right. Okay.
yeah,
Cool. Sarah, I'm going to speak to you about your experience of dealing with people. So it's been a couple of months now since you had a divorce, and you are now talking about it as well publicly. So how has it been? Have you seen any change in people's attitude as your status changed from married to divorce? Do you see any change?
So for me, I found that during the time, as you're all saying about, the experience of how you feel, I felt that during the divorce, yes, it was awful, awful time. I said I have 4 children, and my children were my sanctuary at that time. And then not forgetting that I went, the article that I wrote was called Three Lockdowns and a Divorce, because I had 3 lockdowns while I was going through the divorce, and, him coming back home and staying at home. And although I won't pretend it was awful, it wasn't. It was fine. There wasn't any issue with him coming back to the house, and we were actually, in some cases, it turned out to be quite nice, but going through it all the way to the end, and then right at the end, when we were still in a lockdown, and when my parents couldn't visit, and you can only meet up with certain friends, and I hadn't told many people that I was going through the divorce. And I only spoke about the divorce after it was done, because not because of really what people would say, but because I just thought it was already such a weird time for everyone going through lockdowns and COVID and stuff that we hadn't experienced before. But what I did find after was my mental state just lifted as soon as that was complete. It was like a very heavy burden on me for probably the last 2-3 years. And then after that happened, I just felt very lifted and a little bit kind of lighter, if you like. And then I found that the way that people have portrayed it after, because I've been brought up with that kind of mentality about stigma, when people get divorced, and I was expecting some stuff, I was expecting things, people might say something or drop something, but I'll be honest with you, I felt like so many people's attitude to divorce has changed in so many ways, and so many people have moved forward, and there are so many people, family, friends, neighbors, and people who just say, well, do you know what, if you're not happy, there's no point, is it? Life's too short. Especially, I think, even more so after COVID, when people were just sort of dropping like flies, weren't they? And I think people had a very different approach to life, and how we should appreciate life and appreciate what we have. And kind of, if you aren't happy, then why are you doing it? What are you doing this for? So although I would say, yeah, I'm sure that there is a stigma attached, and it's still early days for me. But in all honesty, I haven't experienced anything negative or bad. And if anything, I feel like it has lifted my confidence as a woman, as an Asian woman, and as a mother, because I know that all the things that I was doing before, I am able to do them alone. And that kind of given me that stronger independence, and able to move forward.
That's really good to hear, really good. But I think another thing you did, you came out and spoke about it publicly as well too, because sometimes what happens when people hear about somebody's marriage breakdown, they would ask someone else what's wrong in your life rather than asking directly. So now that you have come out and you have just spoken about it, I think that also sometimes works in favor. So yeah, Sarah, I'll come to you in a minute. But Sarah, you have just spoken about, I think you touched upon reasons for divorce. So my next question would be, so many people come to you, right? Some come confused. Some probably come with a firm decision wanting a divorce, and they probably share their personal experience, information, and about their marriage. So from all those interactions, I think I need to mute there. There's some noise. Okay. So from all those interactions, experience.
Can I just say, here?
Yeah, go ahead.
Moni?
Yeah.
I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes.
I'm having some internet issues, and I think I'm going to disappear. I think it's not going to keep me in. It keeps coming in.
Okay. All right.
I'm sorry.
We
I think
can
I'm
hear you.
going to disappear from here because it's going. I'm sorry.
So
the internet
you'll
keeps
not
coming
be
and going.
Okay, so are you saying you're not going to be a part of the show? Oh, okay. All right. That's okay. Anyway, Sarah, I'm coming back to you. So from all those interactions and experience you had with the clients, what do you think are, or what in your mind are the main reasons of divorce that come again and again?
Well, so many reasons. And I think, like I said before, some people drift apart. And I think you see that more as, I think it can happen relatively quickly, but usually as the kids get older. I've got lots of clients at the moment who during lockdown have been sitting opposite, the kids maybe moved out, and they're now stuck with each other day in, day out at home and looking across thinking, I actually don't have anything in common with this person on the other side of the breakfast table anymore. We just don't have those interests, those passions, the kids, the activities. You take them to football, I'm going to ballet, and you do the pickup, I've got to go to work. When all that has sort of gone, sometimes there just isn't that connection for the next 20, 30 years, however long, to grow old together. If that isn't there, if that's lost or maybe fizzled out. So that can be, just time and you changing over that period of time. But also, sometimes it comes down to lack of communication that's been going on for a very long time. And what happens if there are issues that come up and you don't address them is that they start to fester and they start to stack up. Some of us don't like conflict, some of us will avoid conflict, but what that means is those issues go unresolved. Or maybe you don't want to bring them up because you're worried about your partner's reaction if you did, or fear of losing them, or rocking the boat too much. There's lots of reasons why we may not address those issues. But what happens is they grow and they grow and they grow, and then it will be one thing. And quite often it can be small, but sometimes it can be big, and it just shatters everything. But that could be maybe an affair, or you just can't tolerate it anymore. So I think there's lots of different reasons why it breaks down, but usually underlying all those reasons is lack of communication, not taking the control and sort of sorting it out in that moment, but allowing it to be swept under the carpet and thinking, oh, well, I'll just get on with it. We'll just do other things. It will get better. Quite often things just don't unless you address them. So yeah, communication would be probably the number one reason underlying some of the other things, that maybe on the surface he's had an affair or she's had an affair, but that usually started with a breakdown of communication quite a while back.
I mean, do you know what, when you're saying this, there's this common assumption, isn't it, that the number one cause of divorce would be infidelity, but then you're saying lack of communication. So that's huge. And in India, because this media house is based in India, so I'm bringing that. The polls report says there is another reason which really ranks up high is the strained relationship between the daughter-in-law and the mother-in-law, and because of that, the daughter-in-law decides to step out of the marriage. But I think that's not so common in the Western world, probably. But yeah, there can be so many reasons. Gautam, coming to you, I would like your viewpoint really on this. Do you think that families and our society is a little bit more heavy or critical towards divorced women than men? And keeping in mind, the patriarchal societies in the world, what's your view?
I mean, I can only talk about my own experiences. So I was born in Assam. I came here as a baby. My elder brother was 6 when he came, and actually, my brother, he married a divorced English woman. Huh? And when this happened, I mean, my mother and father were key people in the Assamese community. And there was some of their friends didn't talk to them, saying, "You can't let this happen." I don't think they had much choice; it was going to happen. And so, I think begrudgingly, my father and mother let it happen. We had a Christian wedding and a Hindu wedding. It was 2 weeks worth of weddings. We had all sorts of weddings. Wow. And actually now both families, the families are accepted. I love my sister-in-law to bit. The whole family loves the sister-in-law. And she had 2 kids from a previous marriage, and I consider them my nieces, and so does the rest of the family, and everything's good. But I think at that time, so it must have been about 20 years ago. I got married in that region. There was just, some people didn't like it and some did. But now I think what with the first generation Assamese people being of my age, and, lots of people brought up here, there is a lot more divorce. There's a lot more people who have married divorced people and having relationships. So I think the Assamese people here aren't a closed community. We're quite open. We're quite broad in our views because, most of them are academics, they're doctors, engineers, they've gone to university in Assam, they come here with broad minds. So I think it is more accepted now than it was.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. No, it's I wanted your viewpoint, so thank you. But Sarah, do you want to add anything? Do you think that societies can be a little bit more critical towards divorced women?
I think there's still a stigma, absolutely. But I think it's more about a lack of education these days, because there's a lot of traditions out there that people just repeat because that's what they've always done, rather than actually thinking, how is this best serving us? And, times have changed. Like Gautam was saying, there's so many different scenarios now that could play out. And, if you look around the schools in the UK, 2.4 kids and mum and dad together, it's just not the norm. I mean, it really isn't the norm. There's lots of different ways to have kids these days. I interviewed a lady from my podcast who went through IVF and a sperm donor, and she knows a lot of people in her community that are doing that. And that's now becoming an option for women who don't have a man in their lives. There's so many new things that are more normal now than ever before. So I think we've got to start educating on, and that's part of my role as well in the media and my articles and my books that I've written is, that divorce happens to, the best of us in some cases. We go through times, and often if you're not being divorced, you can see it as a failure. I know I certainly saw divorce as a failure until I went through it. And I thought, oh my goodness, am I a failure? And I was thinking, actually, this is a little bit out of my control in some ways, and some things I did have a responsibility, but I'm learning from this, and I think the important thing is that, like Gautam said, you only live once. We have the cards we've been dealt, but it's what you do with it, and divorce can actually be a really healthy option. If you were in an unhealthy relationship, if you were in a toxic relationship or an abusive relationship, and as the patron of a domestic abuse charity called the DASH charity, which stands for Domestic Abuse Stops Here, I've seen that in that charity alone, over 300% increase in calls during the pandemic. So there's a massive rise in that. So, there's so many reasons why relationships break down if they're not healthy, or even if they're healthy, but you've just fallen out of love. And maybe you're one of those people who's watching those rom-coms on telly thinking, oh, I wish that was me and I'm never going to have that again. If that's how you're feeling, then it's time to take your power back and start deciding what you want in life. Because a lot of people stay together for the kids. A lot of people stay together because of what everybody else is going to think. But you don't want to be unhappy for the rest of your life just because of what somebody else might or might not think. And also for your kids, you want to be the role model that sets the example that actually, you've got to be happy in life and you've got to be kind. You can break up in an amicable way, but ultimately you're not responsible for somebody else's life to the extent that you're going to be upset for the rest of your life or unhappy just because you're worried about upsetting somebody else.
Yes.
And then ultimately they deserve the chance to be someone who truly loves them in the way that they deserve as well. So there's so many ways of looking at this, but I do think it comes back to education and people understanding that, divorce can be a really healthy option and gives you a chance to redesign your life just the way you want it, to detox out all the negative stuff and all the negative things that you don't want to do anymore, and reevaluate and start, nourishing your soul with some really good, happy moments.
Yeah, no, that's such a wonderful point. I actually would like to talk a little bit more about that. But when this question was a little bit important, when I asked, if there is still a little bit more stigma attached to divorced women, because I actually invited this man who is a researcher. He has done some research on this, but because of his double booking, he couldn't make it. And it does say that, especially I think in India, you would see that the prospects of remarrying for divorced women is still far lesser than divorced men. And it is still, they're more scrutinized, they're judged. I think trust is an issue. So it is still there. It's just that, I think we need to change the narrative, like you have just said. And coming to that, because we are talking about stigma, I really want to ask you this question. And I actually make this clear also to people who are watching as well, that this discussion is really not about endorsing divorce whatsoever. You have said a while back that this is the second, I think, stigmatizing experience in people's lives. So clearly it's so traumatizing. But if for some reason two people have decided to go for a divorce, then how can we normalize it? Because I think the existing stigmas only make it harder and complicated for them. And this discussion is about that. So, Sarah, to end those stigmas, those taboos, what sort of things need to happen? And keeping in mind that different countries are in different stages of the graph. So are there general principles that can be applied anywhere?
So, I mean, to end the stigma is a big thing. I think we've got to break it down into educating the people around us and making sure that they understand that it's not a failure, and that there are good reasons why relationships break down. And just because there's that old saying, isn't there, that if you keep on doing the things you've always done them, you're going to get the same results. So if you're going to stay in a marriage that's toxic, and unless you take a step back and both commit to making some big changes, it's not going to work out. And I'm a big advocate for working at your marriage and doing what you can to get it back on track, and even committing like a 3-month period to do everything you can to step up and communicate with your ex, and what would you like me to do differently, and what would I like you to do differently, and let's both commit to showing up and doing those things for 12 weeks, which is going to give you more clarity on making a better decision. Can we sustain this or not? But I think educating and having those friends around you that are going to be there for you, because whilst there might be other people in the community who maybe hold on to those sort of more traditional views, that it does have a stigma, that are going to have their own opinion. We can't control other people. The only thing you control is you. So pick the friends. Like Gosam had his brother's wife, who I know personally is an awesome human being. We all need awesome human beings like her in our lives, so that you have that go-to friend who will be there for you, who have your back, who loves you and cares for you and give you that positivity, as well as that genuine love and support that you need, just to hold you while you're in that space. So having those good people around you and selecting them. They may not be your, the person that you would normally go to. Remember though, because sometimes our best friends, or maybe our closest family members, like our parents or brothers and sisters, they may be just as emotionally involved as you are in that breakup. And so they may fuel that fire unwittingly and not meaning to be unkind. But I had a client the other day who turned up with her boot full of chopped up suits and clothes, and her best friend had come over. They thought, come on, he's been such a horrible person. Let's chop them all up, put them in the big bag and drop them around on his doorstep. And when she turned up, it was the first session. I hadn't met her before. And she turned up and said, look what I've done. I was like, oh my gosh. Okay. I mean, there were serious repercussions there. But her friend didn't mean to make things harder for her. But do you see what I mean? You've got to choose those people carefully. And I think by educating the people around you and the people that matter, having them understand the reasons why, so they're not judging you from that perspective, and looking at it a human perspective, as Sarah, who was with us earlier, was saying, actually things are changing, but it comes with, someone who's gone through it, and that might have changed your perspective, or maybe you've gone through it and that's changed your own perspective. I know it certainly changed mine. and just knowing that you can come out of this happier and stronger. I think all those things will start to sow those seeds. And if, for example, your family then see you moving on and being happier and healthier and a better parent or a better role model and helping others going through tough times, I think that also starts to spread the word and re-educate people that it's okay. You know, it's okay. And if it's not working, then the best thing might be for you to remove yourself from that situation. And if they can see the benefits, then that starts to dial down that stigma.
Yeah, and that's wonderful you said. And then plus I think the media, education, the law, the religious awareness, I think they all have a role to play in probably educating and creating the awareness what is true, the true reality, and what are the circumstances of divorced people. I think as individuals, I think we should make all the effort not to be a part of those discussions where it looks like, sounds like negative. I suppose all that is also, a step towards destigmatizing. But thank you for all that you have shared. Gautam, for you, I mean, I'm sure you will have as well views about how we can stop, the stigma and the taboo we are talking about. So feel free to share those. But I also want to know, what do you think are the benefits of, stopping, ending rather the stigmas? How does it benefit individuals or families and societies? How does it benefit?
With free-thinking, broad people, like I hope we all consider ourselves, then there is no stigma. If someone says to you, footballers are taking the knee now, there's no stigma in being coloured, or, if my son came to me saying I'm going to marry a Muslim or a Jew or an atheist, I don't care. Yeah? It doesn't make the person who they are. Yeah? Just because they're divorced, it doesn't give them the character that they have. Yeah? So I'm hoping that most people abroad now. I know I mentioned earlier that the family, some people didn't want my brother marrying a divorced woman. Well, this was 20 years ago. They're friends again now, and they realised they were wrong. So, when you say, does it carry a stigma at the divorce time, like Sarah mentioned and like Sarah mentioned, you're thinking, oh, I don't want anyone to see me because they're looking at me as a divorced person, and oh dear. And but once you come out of it and you come out and you start socializing again and doing all those things, there is no stigma. And it's just one of the things that you have when it's all happening, when you're deep in it. So
that's a really good point, Gautam, you have said. Because if you come out, then it's okay. Because I have heard people saying that other people seem to be very awkward, around them, what to say to them, what not to. And because of that, they don't come out, go for social isolation. But you are saying when you go out, people are fine, isn't it? Is that what you are saying?
Exactly. But you're not fine at the time that divorce is happening. I've got an Assamese girlfriend of mine, a friend who's a girl who's getting divorced at the moment, and it's quite secretive. So people do, it's just that, as I said right at the beginning of this program, your emotions are all over the place at that time. So perhaps you think you're a pariah, you've done something wrong in society, but actually all the reasons that Sarah mentioned about why divorce happens, they're not bad, not all of them. And it's because you want freedom, you want to be happy in life. That's why. So who is anyone else to tell me I can't be happy?
Yeah, no, so true. And I think it's the point that you have said, that two people can be absolutely wonderful human beings. It's just between them. It's something is not working for whatever reason. I think it's all that simple sometimes. So Sarah, you have already touched upon, by the way, why divorce can be a very healthy thing. And like we have said, it's no one would ever deny that it's deep grief. People go through so much, but at the same time, it is liberating. Have you seen clients personally who have come out stronger, happier after going through a divorce?
Go to me. Yes, absolutely. Oh my goodness. I put myself firmly in the happily divorced category. When anyone asks me, are you married, and I say no, I'm happily divorced, it instantly puts them at ease, and we have a bit of a laugh because it's really true. So ultimately yes, because I think, like I said before, you can go through those tough times, okay, but actually it's a well-known fact and scientifically proven that adversity makes you stronger, okay, and whatever life throws at you, it only throws at you what you can handle. I know at times it's going to seem like you can't, when you're on the floor doing that ugly crying thing where it's just the world's ending and there's no light at the end of the tunnel. But as you get through it and you build the muscle and the resilience to get through that process and come out the other side, you are stronger. Okay, yes, you may have those scars I talked about before, that the emotional scars, but they aren't going to define you if you make that decision, because this is your chance to redesign your life just the way you want it. Okay, and we can take stock. We jump off that treadmill of everyday life that our married friends may still be on. Get up, go to school, do the school run, go to work, clean the house, walk the dog, come back, pick the kids up, cook the dinner. Oh my God, time for bed. Up we go again. Next, it's constant. Whereas when you go through a divorce, that's like, all stops, comes to a screeching halt, and you have to think, gosh, okay, what's next? And that may look like a blank canvas, or it may look like a black hole, okay? But whichever it is for you right now, you need to make the decision of how do you put as much color or shine as much light into that black hole as you possibly can? Because this is your chance to redesign it and choose what you want. Get rid of the things. Stop doing the things you don't enjoy. Stop hanging out with those people or minimizing the time you spend with those people you don't want to be around, and start choosing the people you want to be with. Start thinking about what you want. Now, it's going to feel super, super, super selfish for so many people out there. I know you're going, well, it feels wrong to put me first. Well, guess what? It's not wrong. And it's about giving yourself permission to be able to step back up, take your power back, and start enjoying life. And I work with my clients on breakup bucket lists, which is a list of everything you can do now, which you could never have done with your ex. So whether that's wearing, a new color, or painting your nails pink, or, climbing Everest, or whatever it is for you, you can start doing those things and having the freedom and focusing on what's great rather than what isn't great or what you might be missing out on. It's the time to start focusing on the future and start getting excited and building that up so that you get the momentum that takes you past your breakup and into a life that you're really enjoying living.
Wow, brilliant! Yeah, brilliant. That's.
If I can just that one thing about. I mean, it's all good to be positive, and you need to do that. Otherwise, what's the point in life? You have to move forward and be positive and try and achieve stuff. But the divorce did rip something out of me. I could say I'm not a clever psychologist like you, Sarah, but the divorce did rip something out of me that I'll never get. But I'm not the same person as I was before marriage. And whether that's life, but it was because of the painful experience. And one of the things that I've missed is before marriage, with friends, I used to laugh so my belly hurt. I don't know if you've ever done that, but since marriage, I've not done that. I just haven't done it. And I would like to. But so I think it's...
I think it can change you. It absolutely can. But it doesn't have to change you for the rest of your life. Okay, so there's definitely things you can do that are going to unhook that and start to change them. And I think, it's about looking for how you do that. Because I would hate for you, Ghosting, because I know you, and obviously we don't speak very much because I know your brother, who makes me belly laugh, to be fair. He is very funny. But I think, I think it's about learning just those little tricks so that you don't have to live with that. Because that would be really sad to think that had gone, because it hasn't. I know you've been through a hard time, but you can get that back. It's not like you can't, you can. So it's about finding ways to start reigniting that. And, you can, and you will.
I hope so.
That's great. That's great. But no, Gautam, good that you also picked that up, because like I said before, it's really, we are not trying to glorify divorce whatsoever, because we know there's so much that one person goes through. And that's what you said. But if that happens, then what needs to happen? I think that this discussion is about. So Gautam, if you, you would know this probably coming from an Asian family, that we talk a lot about marriage, lots of discussions around marriage, but we don't talk openly about divorce. And you would also see that some people marry because of family pressure. Some people also do not go against, decide against divorce because what will families think? So as family seems to be such a big part of the entire thing, what would be your message to maybe parents, families, relatives, whatever that is? What do you want to say?
Oh goodness me, I can't advise or say anything
No,
to others
it's yeah.
because I'll tell you what, because divorce, it's a very personal thing. Yeah? That thing is happening to yourself, and that thing is now I can't go into the specifics of my divorce because it wouldn't be right to do that if she's there. So, but all I can say is that my family did support me. They were there for me, and actually, they knew that the divorce should happen because I wasn't happy. Yeah? And so those circumstances were good. I had support from them. And so I would say that going back, if I had to say something to them, was, yeah, just support them. Support your family member who's going through a really rough time, because that's what family's about, isn't it? Yeah? It's not only having a good time, it's about, which is important, but it's about some of the rough times. And so, yeah, just support them and be there for them. That's what I would say.
Great. I mean, this is what I wanted to hear, because you would probably say that family support has helped you get through the process. And there would be cases where that support is missing. And also, sometimes it's important to know that, as big as this is decision like divorce, is really impulsive. They must have tried months and years before coming to that, and they gave up. So it's not about shaming and blaming, that has to stop. And like you said, it's the support.
Actually, some of the family members before the divorce, they came along and said, right, we're going to try stuff. They acted as marriage counsellors. And so we had to sit in a room together and write 3 things nice about each other. And she had to do the same. So actually, they tried to keep the marriage together, but we tried. We tried this sort of counselling type things, and it wasn't to be. So they tried to heal it, and then they supported me when I cut it. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, great. Great to hear that, Gautam. So Sarah, if someone comes to you who are confused, like Gautam just said, that they did some of this exercise of what are the good things and stuff like that. So people can be confused. Sometimes they're stuck. They tried doing different things, but everything comes back to what it was. And sometimes they also find they don't know how to find the best solution. What do you tell those clients? What's your advice to them?
Well, first of all, getting your breakup support team is really essential. Like Gautam said, having carefully chosen family and friend members around you, I think, is key. If you think you're going to need legal advice, even if your ex is saying you don't, sometimes it's good to get an understanding of what you're legally entitled to, because every situation is different. If you're worried about finances, you can go through budgets, what you would have to live on if you split your finances with someone who's an expert in that area. Obviously working. I mean, I'm a coach, and I train people to become breakup and divorce coaches. Actually, we don't have a coach in India, but we have a coach in 13 different countries around the world. But I think actually sometimes training to help other people in these situations can really help you on your own journey as you learn the tools as well. But the good news is there are lots of tools and techniques out there that you can use that are going to help you dial down those negative emotions. And you can access those. I mean, my podcast, Heartbreak to Happiness, is on iTunes. It's all free. You can get a lot of the content from there. But just immerse yourself in that, in getting the help. My book, Uncoupling, How to Survive Breakup or Divorce, there's a lot of information that is out there that can help you, that doesn't cost anything, but will help you just to rebuild your life and start feeling more in control at a time where it is an emotional roller coaster, but knowing that it will get better and you will come out the other side stronger and with more opportunities than you can ever dream of from where you are right now, for sure.
Yeah, that's
be careful with that lawyer thing, because that nearly bankrupted me. Yeah? But emotionally all over the place, and I was giving money to the lawyer, and actually my lawyer was rubbish. Yeah, and I didn't know that at the time. Yeah? In retrospect, I can see that, and it nearly did me in. Yeah? And luckily, I've
Yeah,
recovered from it.
careful. Absolutely. I mean, I was talking there, Gautam, about just asking just to get an advice on what you're entitled to before you decide whether you're going to go with a lawyer and do that, because it can be extremely expensive. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
You do need to really watch that, because it can just spiral out of control. So I'm not advocating going through that process. I'm just saying understand what your rights are legally, so you know where you're going to stand moving forward.
Would you then say that, of course, I think Gautam has really picked a really important point. Lots of couples, the first thing will come to mind is to sort out the legal side of things. But would you then say it is sometimes really good to find somebody like you, a divorce coach, who will have a neutral narrative anyways, and also help through the process, also to keep the right perspectives? Would you say that probably is a better approach?
It can be. It just depends. I mean, if you are amicably breaking up, you might be able to do that on your own. But if as a divorce coach, I see usually one side. I don't do couples therapy because there's marriage counselling, relationship therapists for that. I deal with one side. So, but again, it's good to get someone that you can talk to, you can confide in, that can help you take the emotion out. Because when the divorce process, especially the legal process, becomes emotional, that's when it starts to spiral out of control. You're firing letters off to get your point across, to let them know how you're feeling. And that is very, very expensive. When actually the judge is going to strip all that out and only interested in, well, who owns what's the net worth? Okay, right, let's divide this up. So I think it's really important, as Gautam said, just to watch your costs there. And if you don't need to get into the legal process and you can work it out yourselves and just get a lawyer to stamp off the agreement, great. But if you're divorcing a difficult person, that may not be possible. So again, you've got to, and a divorce coach will be able to help you navigate that really fine line. And we don't give legal advice or financial advice, but we do understand the system. So I think it can be very, very helpful and save you money in the long run.
That's it. Yeah, save you money, but also you said that, taking care of the emotional side can be quite helpful in the process to keep the focus. So Gautam, what would be, what change do you want to see? Or rather, should I say, what would you like some of the takeaways to be from this discussion? Although you have been talking about various things, but is there a few things that you feel?
Well, what's the title? It's does divorce still carry a stigma? I hope the answer is no. Yeah, just be who you are and not be afraid of that. Yeah? I mean, and these things happen in life. So why? Because being a stigma is like a bad word, isn't it? Yeah? It's like, don't want to, go there. But it doesn't have to be. Yeah? As Sarah mentioned, divorce can be liberating. It's your next chapter in life. Yeah, it's the next chapter in life beyond coronavirus. Yeah?
That's true. That's true. And also, you know what? It can sometimes stifle each other's growth when you are in a difficult relationship. So sometimes it helps you to grow when you're out of it.
And for me, I don't think it's a stigma. For my friends and for my family, it isn't. But where it does affect is my 14-year-old boy. And this is what because we had joint custodies with his mother and he comes back to me. It's week on, week off. But he started asking questions saying, who am I going to invite to my wedding? Mother or father? And I think now because I've got a son, I think it does affect him, actually. I never thought it did when he was 3 or 4, but it does. So I think I need to put some energy into making sure that he's happy and healthy mentally as well, and emotionally.
Great. That's great. So Sarah, what would you say? I think because we haven't really covered the children's side of things at all. So what Gautam just said, about children's also mental health, what some of the things parents can do. And also when they're going through the process, for Gautam, his child was too young then, but how to tell the children when you decide that you're going for a divorce? Is there a right time, good time? What would you say?
Well, I mean, that's a great question, because I think children, are the most important thing when you're going through a divorce, and you've got to always think what's the right thing by them. Okay, and that means not reacting in the moment. It's not doing the right thing by your kids is rarely the easiest thing, I'm afraid. Usually it's the I just want to say this, but I'm not going to say it. Okay, I want to do this, but I'm just going to cause more problems. I'm not going to do it. So it's really just having that front and foremost. What's the best outcome here for my child or my children? If you are, I'm a big believer that divorce doesn't have to damage kids. It doesn't have to. It can, but it doesn't have to. And very often, there's a lot of press and media about how it's damaging and how it screws kids up. Look, as I said before, some adversity, especially in childhood, not extreme abuse or poverty or anything like that, but some adversity actually makes children more resilient, and they can learn from us as their role models. They're looking at, for example, how do we cope when the wheels fall off, when you don't get that fairy tale ending in life? What do you learn? Do they learn that we fall apart, we sob, and life's never the same again? Or do they learn that actually mum or dad or both, they were sad, they didn't run away from those emotions, but they did what they could to manage that situation and rebuilt their lives and move on? Because if you look right now at the teenage suicide rate, it is going through the roof. Okay, it's going through the roof. And this is not acceptable. But actually, the kids are looking at, well, what are the coping mechanisms available to me now? And they have some really serious coping mechanisms that are on the table now that weren't there certainly when we were kids, like self-harming or suicide. Because we see it a lot in the press right now, it becomes an option for them. Now, all kids are going to find it a little bit difficult that their parents are splitting up. That's a normal human reaction to a difficult situation. So you've got to anticipate it's going to be some emotional fallout, not diagnose them with all these conditions. It's just a normal human reaction to a situation. And we need to give them the tools as parents to cope with that. So whether it's 5-star jumps, putting a smile on your face, going out and getting some exercise, talking about your emotions, putting a plan in place to get through it and solutionize rather than running away from problems. They're going to watch us as their role models and learn from us. Okay, and we can have those discussions with kids to build their toolkit of resources. So when the wheels fall off, because someone's going to cheat on them, someone's going to lie to them, someone's going to let them down, they're not going to get everything they want in life, because that's life, right? So if we can equip them, use this tough experience of a divorce to show them how they can cope, how they can rebuild their lives, and what they can go on and do, and it doesn't limit them or doesn't tarnish them in any way, or it may have, I know Goshen said it wasn't as happy anymore, but you can work on that and get that back just to show them they can. So that gives them the hope. And then when you're telling your kids, if you can sit down with your ex, obviously that would be great, but I appreciate a lot of people can't do that. But number one is reassure them it's not their fault, it's nothing they did, and that both parents still love them, if that is true, obviously. But, stick to the truth. Don't overpromise. It's going to be great. It's going to be fantastic. It's probably, it's going to be different, but there's going to be great things about both. You can have 2 Christmases, 2 birthdays, 2 sets of toys. Find the things, because the kids will take their lead from you. Please don't be emotional when you're telling them. Be practical. It can be a little bit sad, obviously, but, sobbing uncontrollably, they're going to think, gosh, they're telling me this, but look at their body language. The unconscious message will be it's worse than they're telling me. So, you've got to compose yourself, go in, explain it factually, don't overpromise, don't say anything that isn't going to be true, but let them know that, other friends have gone through this too. That's always a good way as well of saying, well, so-and-so, they do this and this person does this. Or watch movies, again, where kids are living in separate homes and it's working and it's going well. There's lots of ways you can reinforce a positive message to kids. And as I said, they're never going to be the only kid in the whole class or the whole year group, because it's just not that way anymore. So I think, it's actually becoming more normal, and they will take their lead from you.
Yes, yeah, so true. And also, I think a happier parent is a better parent, isn't it? And I mean, it's not the end of the world when they think that's the worst thing that can happen to a child. It's not true. Probably enduring a hostile life can be a worse thing. So what you said makes absolute sense. We'll have to actually end here because of time. But really thank you for all the insights and also for sharing your experience, Gautam. How can people find you, Sarah? You said about your book, and you have also spoken about your podcast, and also you have a website. How can they find you?
So if you're interested in following me on Instagram, it's Sarah Davison Divorce Coach. My website is sarahdavidson.com. If you're interested in coaching or training to become a coach, that's all on my website, sarahdavidson.com. And yeah, I mean, it's been great. And thank you, Gautam and Hira, for being such great co-guests on this. It's been fab. I've really enjoyed it.
Same here, absolutely. No, thank you for all the balanced views, Sarah, and also the neutral perspectives. And Gautam, so thankful to you that you came here, and it's not always easy to share personal experience, but you did that. So thank you ever so much
Thanks.
to both of you.
Thank you for having me.
Not at all. Great pleasure. And yeah, goodbye to both of you. And also thank you to the Sentinel people who are watching the show. Yeah, keep well, to look after yourself, and goodbye for now. Bye.